My abusive boyfriend and I swapped bodies. He pummeled me with purpling knuckles, reducing both my face and his fists to pulp. And when my body lost the ability to protect me, I let my soul wander to the thought plane. Horrifyingly, however, I no longer recognized it. My inner utopia, once a pleasant field from my childhood memories, was infested with black and blue weeds, long tendrils that grew and grew, obscuring my vision in a way that returned me to the agony of reality. Even my mind had been desecrated by him, and I wondered, as always, whether Jensen's torture hurt more physically or psychologically. Not that it mattered. Nowhere was safe. I longed for more than mere detachment from my body. I longed for detachment from myself, to be someone else, anyone else, and that wish was granted. "You're pathetic," Jensen whispered. The man's outline was silhouetted by the harsh glare of his headlights, a colorless hulk looming over me, the wounded woman at his feet. His balled fists spilt droplets onto the deserted road, and I felt his revulsion, without seeing his eyes. All I thought to do, whilst he paused, was finally roll onto my front and shield my face from his fists. "Look at me when I'm talking to you," he barked. I gasped as he pressed the ridged sole of his boot onto my neck, pancaking me to the gravel. With sprawled limbs, compressed painfully against the road, I fought fearfully to cherish those final few moments of life, succeeding only to steep into a deeper level of fear. "I'm trying," I spluttered. "Do you know how it makes me feel?" he asked. "You were parading around the dance floor in those shorts like some filthy dog, and those men were looking at you. They were looking at me for not stopping you," I cried. "You always say you like these shorts. You say." Jensen constricted my throat more forcefully with his boot, obstructing my airway. My eyes watered. Snot clotted my nose. Lights and colors danced as my head started to feel airy. "You were tempting them," he claimed, "putting ideas in their heads. I really thought you were different, but you're just like every other woman. Cheap, brainless meat. Only good for one thing, and you're not even good at that. Terror is one thing, but there is no word for the primal powerlessness that immediately precedes death. The moment at which I realized that neither fight nor flight would save me. The moment at which a cloaked shape appeared at the end of the road, striding towards me with intent. But that deep, subconscious horror consumed my soul as the hooded figure approached. His form lost shape as my vision shrank and my lungs deflated. Then came its voice. The shadow spoke not with words, but a promise. Called to me, and I answered. "I wish I weren't Bethany." The cloaked figure stopped walking. For an eternal second, it watched me squirm beneath Jensen's boot. Then the thing allowed itself to be swept away by the bitter breeze of that ferocious night. The thing that may have been a reaper, a genie, or a figment of my oxygen-depleted imagination. And before I had time to process what I'd witnessed, the world distorted. As if torn by a riptide, I felt my soul warp upwards and tunnel through a blackened spiral of air. My essence brushed past a red, writhing droplet of light, moving in the opposite direction. A non-physical force with which I felt some frightful kinship. And then my soul rejoined the tangible world, slipped behind wide, terrified eyes, but they were not my own. I looked down at the boot pressing on a compressed neck, and my eyes swam in abject dread. I was viewing the assault through the eyes of Jensen, yelling deeply as the body beneath my boot shrieked at a sharp pitch. "What the fuck is happening?" she hoarsely cried from below. I jerked backwards, lifting the boot, and then watched my former self gasp for air, before rising on unsteady legs to face me. As my own body turned to face me, I finally saw the full extent of Jensen's assault, the excruciating collage of colors. Of course, it was not that callous act which horrified me. "That's me?" The girl in front of me, wearing my face, wailed. "That's me." I watched my former body tremble uncontrollably, before eyeing the broad, bloody palms attached to my new body. Took a long moment for me to accept the truth, to accept what I had known from the moment it happened. I was inside Jensen's body, and he was inside mine. "We have to call someone," I whispered. It wasn't a solution. The best solution would have been to run, take the blessed opportunity to escape my wretched abuser. But my brain wasn't functioning. "Bethany," Jensen muttered. "Is that you? What is happening?" "I don't know," I blubbered, backing towards the car. "Let's get out of the street." "You did this to me, didn't you?" he suddenly asked, as if coming to some grand realization. "How?" Jensen, dressed in my skin, started to weakly pound my new body with shaking fists, barely making a dent in my well-padded gut. He did not understand what weeks of neglect had done to my body. Now his body. For months, Jensen had isolated me in his country home. Imprisoned me, I now accept. He seemed baffled that my body had been so weakened by both near starvation and his vicious beating. The lack of understanding terrified me more than anything. It solidified the man's lack of humanity, that he only ever saw me as something subhuman. But I understood. I felt the new body I wore, felt a sensation that had been lost to me for years. Power. Not the malevolent kind that had plagued Jensen's mind, but the kind that made me feel secure, for the first time in a long time. And I found myself reflexively doing what I had longed to do for 4 years. I caught Jensen's brittle fist in my hand. Not violently, as I didn't want to harm my true body, but I had to act. I'd never felt so incentivized to act. This was my first and last opportunity to escape the monster. "Get in the car," I ordered. He did not protest. Jensen inspected his trembling fists, which had exerted no power over me, then returned his eyes to me. I don't know what he was thinking, whether or not he had finally seen me as more than an object. Whatever the case, he complied. We clambered into his car silently, and I sped away with no destination in mind. I simply had to flee, far from the bloody patch Jensen had left in the road. The spot that would have been my end, had the cloaked figure not arrived. "We need to go to the hospital," he panted, gripping the handle above the door to steady himself. After 10 minutes of working through adrenaline, whilst snaked through bending country lanes, I found myself wondering something. Found myself glancing at Jensen, who was quivering in my old body, struggling to control his breathing. And then my gaze was drawn to my new, sturdy, blood-stained hands gripping the wheel. I thought of how close I'd been to meeting my end, mere moments before our souls were exchanged between bodies. Why am I trying to save him? I wondered. I should have left him at the side of the road. I reminded myself that he still lived inside my true body, a body I wanted back, and I pretended to restrain myself for that reason. But the truth was that I simply didn't want to hurt him. Even with his violent bones and bulky muscles at my disposal, I didn't want to do it. Felt sickened, in fact, by the prospect of ending somebody. If Jensen had attacked me again, it would have been an entirely different story. In our new bodies, I would have been able to defend myself. But Jensen seemed to have shriveled away, seemingly realizing that he no longer possessed any physical control. Still, I didn't have to hurt him to channel my newfound strength. I just had to shift the dynamic. "We're going to Frankie's house," I stated firmly. "No, we're not," Jensen said. "We already talked about this. Running away from me won't solve your problems, Bethany. Besides, you hated living with her. Why would you want to go back there if—" "We're going to Frankie's house," I harshly reiterated, before composing myself. "If we go to the hospital and tell them what happened, they'll section us. We have to be smart, Jensen. If we want help, we need to go to someone who would believe our story. Frankie's the only person I trust." "She's mental," Jensen scoffed. "Why would we tell her? I don't know what's happened to us. Do you?" I asked. "If one person has the slightest inkling, it'll be her." "Why?" "Because she believes in the healing power of crystals and fucking alien frequencies." Jensen laughed, spluttering blood. "The shit she believes isn't real." I ferociously squeezed the wheel, not knowing whether the rage belonged to Jensen's corrupt body or my mind. I was haunted by the prospect of becoming him, the prospect of wearing his body so snugly that those malignant thoughts and unhinged whims would worm into my soul. "I don't know whether you've noticed, Jensen, but this shit is very fucking real," I coldly stated. "We are going to Frankie's house, and that's final." Jensen did not respond. I expected a rush of endorphins, having finally pushed back, but that feeling never came. As we drove to Frankie's house in silence, I simply spiraled into deeper fear. The only thing more terrifying than hearing him speak was hearing nothing at all. It was deceptive to see my own body sitting beside me, but I reminded myself that, behind those eyes, there lurked something deeply disturbing. And the spiral only deepened when we found a frightfully familiar Ford Ranger on Frankie's driveway. The red paint weathered by time and several collisions. The derogatory stickers, plastered like badges of dishonor across the rear window. It belonged to Jake, Jensen's closest friend, and I had no doubt that my boyfriend's cohort of like-minded degenerates would have tagged along. "Why are they here?" I panted as I pulled onto the curb, parking behind the car. My tormentor slowly let his puffy, cut lips round into a horrific smile, one that did not belong on my face. "Jensen," I shouted as he opened the passenger door. "Come on," he chuckled, appropriating my laugh. "You wanted to talk to Frankie. Let's talk to Frankie." As I rushed out of the car to follow him, my mind raced with possibilities. I concluded that, before the assault, Jensen must have told his friends about our argument. Must have told them that I'd threatened to stay with Frankie for a while, and he'd clearly colluded with his friends to meet there. I feared for my friend. Feared for all of us. Jensen pounded on the door. "Just wait a second," I begged quietly. "How are we going to explain what?" "We're not going to explain anything," Jensen said. "Do you want them to think we're fucking crazy?" "So, are you going to pretend to be me?" I asked incredulously. Jensen frowned, clearly having not properly digested the situation. Neither had I, truthfully, and I sympathized as I felt the same. Sympathized because I had been bonded to my abuser for years. Long before this paranormal anomaly. I just wanted it all to stop. Wanted everything to go back to normal. For the first time in a long time, I truly wanted to be in my own body. And I never thought I'd feel that way again. The front door was tentatively opened by a frightened Frankie, and words did not make their way out of my mouth before she sharply inhaled. "Beth," she whimpered, shooting a look of disgust at me, the one wearing Jensen's skin. "What happened?" "Nothing," Jensen replied from my lips. "He crashed the car." "You need to go to the hospital," Frankie said. "You said that too," I pointed out to Jensen, desperate to get away. "Frankie, would you like to come with us?" "I'm not going anywhere with you," she scowled. "I was being silly, honey." Jensen smiled at me. "These are just cuts and bruises. They'll heal." "You're so dramatic." "Sonny," a voice bellowed from the hallway. "We were wondering when you'd get here, mate." Jake, Matt, and Liam emerged, my abuser's 3 antisocial amigos. Jensen opened his lips to reply, before remembering that he was no longer in his own body. He watched his guffawing lackey's beeline towards me, and I had to swallow a willful lump of phlegm as I wrestled with dread. The horror I felt whenever I was faced with those monstrous men. This time, it was amplified by the fear that they might realize I was no longer their friend. "Hey guys," I said, struggling to sound like Jensen. "Listen, I know I said that we should do this, but I've changed my mind. Let's go home." "What? No. We drove all the way here for you," Jake huffed, eyeing me suspiciously. "Bethany needs an intervention, and you clearly aren't getting through to her, Sonny. That's why we're here, isn't it? We're not leaving until this has been sorted." "Yeah, we're not leaving," Matt added. "Yeah," Liam echoed, like a doped-up parrot. I wanted to ask Frankie whether she'd been hurt. Ask whether Jensen's cronies had muscled their way into the house, though I already knew the answer to that. Moreover, I knew that asking those questions would shatter the illusion. These were things my partner wouldn't ever ask. "They're right, Jensen," Jensen said, barely concealing his giddiness. "I've been acting insane. I need this. I've needed this for a long time." "Shut the fuck up," Jake growled. "I wasn't talking to you, bitch, was I?" Jensen's cheeks flushed with some emotion I struggled to place. Frustration, embarrassment, fear perhaps. He wasn't acquainted with that feeling. The feeling of being suppressed. The feeling of being threatened. "Listen, this is, Frankie stammered. "I'm going to call the, you're going to call the, Jake started mocking my friend. "You aren't going to call anyone." Frankie's lip trembled, and the man rolled his eyes. "You're not going to cry again, are you?" He sighed. "We only came here to talk, Frankie. We're here for Bethany, not you. Now, are we going to head inside or stand on this porch all night?" Jensen strolled into Frankie's home without a moment's hesitation, and I followed, trying to ease my friend with a soft, apologetic smile. A smile that seemed to worsen her dread. After all, she didn't see her friends smiling at her. She saw her friend's assaulter offering what must have appeared to be a cruel grin. And Jensen was making no effort to act like me. He strolled confidently into the living room, eyed strangely by everyone, and I was fighting the urge to say something to Frankie. I would have immediately told her everything if Jensen's friends hadn't been there, but they were unpredictable, more unhinged than even my boyfriend. I had no idea how they would have reacted to my tale. I didn't want to incite a violent reaction. "Now, Bethany, do you know why we're here?" Jake asked. "Yes, I do. I've been horrendous," Jensen replied, utilizing a sweet tone and words that betrayed my body. I know I said I wanted to run to Frankie, but he really made me see how stupid I was being. I'm just a coward sometimes, I suppose. Frankie, no offense, but we're not even friends anymore, are we? It's all about Jensen and me now. That's my focus. We just need a little work. Relationships are hard. Matt nodded. But you've got to trust Jensen. He's a good man. He's put up with a lot from you, you know? You're lucky to have him. Frankie scoffed. Have you got something to say, bitch? Liam nodded. Leave it, Jake said. We aren't here to fix her. We're here to help our buddy. Beth? I interjected, heart pounding as I sensed the atmosphere tightening. Let's go upstairs for a second and have a private word. Jensen rolled his eyes. No, babe. We should stay here and listen to what the boys have to say. They're speaking sense. There? Is this what she's always like? Sonny? Jake gasped. You're a fucking nightmare, Bethany. You don't respect him at all, do you? You don't want to work on this relationship. Go upstairs and talk to him. We'll be waiting down here. Jensen was stunned. Nobody had ever spoken to him with such vitriol. And the worst part was the vacant look in my partner's eyes. I sensed that he didn't understand. But I did. I was afraid on his behalf. Afraid of those men. Even in Jensen's body, I didn't feel safe. So I was relieved when he begrudgingly nodded and followed me upstairs. What the fuck are you doing? He asked quietly. Me? I asked. What are you doing? Inviting them here? You were being moronic earlier, talking about running back to Frankie. So, I told them that you were going to leave me, and they said we should all talk, Jensen said. You and your friends planned to intimidate me into submission? I asked, finally speaking my mind after 4 years of imprisonment. Jensen smiled, speaking with gentle abrasiveness. You're such a dumb bitch. Yeah? Well, you're in my dumb body, so watch that tongue of yours. I warned. The sooner we shoo your friends out of here, the sooner we talk to Frankie about whatever's happened to us. Ah, right, and that'll fix everything? She'll put us in contact with some witch doctor who can fix us. Jensen spat. What is wrong with you? I cried. Do you want to be stuck in the wrong body forever? I'm not fighting it, he said softly. I'm sure Frankie will tell us that we have business to resolve. Jensen paused, eyes widening. Yes, that's it. The timing is amazing, isn't it? It all makes sense now. We swapped bodies before the intervention so I can fix things for us. So you get to see things from my perspective. Understand my experience. This is all a learning experience for you. You just need to understand. Then we'll be returned to our bodies. God, it's so obvious. Of course I had to work it all out. That doesn't sound right, Jensen, I replied as he started to walk down the stairs. Let's finish this, he said. We'll sort everything out. Then we'll end up back in our bodies. And you'll never be an ungrateful little bitch ever again. You'll finally appreciate what you have. Jensen, I hissed, following him to the entryway. This isn't all sorted, he announced, bouncing into the living room and returning to his seat. You okay, Sonny? Jake asked me, ignoring the oddly chipper Bethany. I nodded slowly, deciding to go along with Jensen's plan. We just had to claim to have resolved everything. Then we'd get rid of his frightening friends. We talked and she's going to behave, I said, sickened by my own words. Thanks for your help, guys. We'll take it from here. That's it, Liam asked. That's it, I answered. Jensen rolled his eyes. Oh, honey, surely there's more to it than that. We have to work through everything if we want things to go back to the way they were, if you catch my drift. What is your fucking problem? Jake howled. Nothing's ever good enough for you. No, I didn't mean that. Jensen moaned, visibly beginning to tire of the way his friends were treating him. No, I didn't mean that, Matt mocked, giggling. What a whiny little girl. At that moment, Jensen fully unraveled. Shut up, you dumb little. He trailed off, immediately realizing his blunder. What did you say to me? Matt whispered. Jensen said nothing. He turned to me with pleading eyes, knowing that I would be able to put his friend back in line. And perhaps I would have known what to say if I had Jensen's mind to accompany his body. I began, noting Matt rising from his seat. Just calm down, mate. She's rotten, Jensen, the insulted man yelled. You didn't hit her hard enough. Or I hit her too hard? I hurriedly added, laughing through the fear as Matt strolled forwards. Hit her so hard that she, lost a few brain cells. The man did not laugh. wasn't stopped by his friends. And moments later, Matt pounced atop Jensen, proceeding to beat my old body for the second time that evening. Frankie started screaming as I rose to step into the fray, but the other two men rose in unison. Before I managed to save Jensen, who was squirming in my emaciated body, his friends strong-armed me out of the way. "This has been a long time coming, Sonny," Jake whispered in my ear as Matt reduced what remained of my body into a pulp. "She's not high value, mate. There is no fixing her. You should have finished her earlier, but that's okay. We'll do it for you. It's what friends do." Jensen fought valiantly as his friend unknowingly assaulted him, and my boyfriend's blood-soaked eyes enlarged as he realized that my brittle, depleted body lacked the physical fortitude necessary to escape. Yet, in spite of that, his terror paled in comparison to mine. I was forced to endure the outer-body nightmare of watching myself die, knowing that all hope of returning to my true form would die too. After a minute of relentless aggression, Matt finally stopped swinging his fists, and Jensen stopped moving. My body stopped moving. "No!" Frankie screamed, finally summoning the courage to rush out of the room. "Stop her," Jake calmly ordered, turning his head from me for a moment, and I unfroze too. With an elbow to Liam's face and a knee to Jake's gut, I slipped between the blindsided men. Then I followed Matt and Frankie out of the open front door. "Help!" she screamed, darting into the street with Matt in tow. Moments before the man seized her, I lunged forwards, arms curling around his stomach, and tackled him to the tarmac. "What are you fucking doing?" he breathlessly asked as we wrestled in the road. "Get off me, arsehole. The bitch saw everything. We have to kill her." I responded with one well-aimed thump to the head, and I was left bewildered, once again, by the sheer strength of Jensen's body. My fist connected with the man's temple, and he lay still. Frankie had stopped running, eyeing the scene in silent confusion. "What is happening out there?" Jake called from the front door. "Jensen, what are you doing?" Frankie asked as I stood. "Frankie, I need you to listen to me," I said, walking slowly towards her. "We have to get out of here." "You killed Bethany?" she sobbed, stumbling backwards with arms outstretched, desperate to escape me. "You're monsters, and you're all going to rot in prison. Help!" "It's me, Frankie," I said. "It's Bethany," she gagged. "You're sick. You're all sick." 2007, White Hoff Camp. "You told me that you'd never seen anything as beautiful as that blue and purple butterfly. Remember?" I asked. "We were looking up at the stars and—" "Don't," Frankie gasped, haunted by my words. "That's not your story. That's not. It's not something that I would have ever told Jensen," I pleaded, following Frankie down the street as she slowly reversed, not daring to turn her back. "I'm Bethany. Grab her, Jensen," Jake ordered from the distance. "You have to believe me, Frankie," I said. "Why would I lie? There's something wrong with you," she panted. "Somebody, help me." "I made a wish, Frankie," I said. "I wished to leave my body, and I entered his. He entered mine. Matt killed Jensen. Not me." "Stop it," Frankie wailed. "Just leave me alone. Somebody, please." "You said the butterfly must have had babies in your stomach because that was the way Gary Hurt made you feel," I said. "Why would I know that if I were Jensen? Why would I have ever told him that story? It's me. I'm Bethany." Frankie stopped walking, finally processing what I'd said, processing the story that she knew I would not, in a million years, have ever had cause to tell Jensen, regardless of how severely he'd tortured me. I think she'd already sensed it, however. Locking onto my eyes, she saw something that she'd never seen in Jensen's eyes before. Emotion. "That's why we came here," I continued, noting Matt's grunting behind me. "You must know what caused this, Frankie? How I ended up in his body." "Why would I know anything about this?" she asked. "I don't know what's happening. Is this even real? I'm having a psychotic break. I saw something, Frankie. Came to me in a hood. Offered a way to escape my death. I just had to want it. And he granted that wish in the most awful way," I said. "I told him," Matt interrupted, grabbing my shoulder. "Told him we shouldn't help you. You're a wimp, Jensen. And you're weak. You were really gonna save this bitch over us, huh? Fuck you. We did this for you. But I'm not going to prison for you. I didn't even want to be here." I turned to face him, holding up my hands defensively. "Matt, I'm sorry for hitting you. Just let her go. And we'll My words were halted by two firm hands roughly grasping my throat, and the night's loop was complete. Like some terrifying, cosmic punchline, I found myself at the start, feeling the life squeeze out of my soul. I wondered why I had been forced to suffer, why the unholy being hadn't simply let my nightmare end on that road beneath Jensen's boot. The clunk of something heavy against flesh and bone brought me back to life. Frankie had bludgeoned Matt's head with a rock plucked from the grass beside the road, releasing my neck from his grasp. His body crumpled to the road. "I don't know what I believe," Frankie whimpered, fearfully eyeing the two men who were racing into the street. "How do I fix this?" I wailed. She shook her head, eyes growing absent. "I had a friend who told me about—" "No, it isn't that." "What?" I cried, backing away from the two men. "Tell me." "It likes to watch people suffer," Frankie whispered. "It saves those at death's door, but always at a cost." "What is it?" I asked. "What have you done?" Jake yelled, racing forwards and pushing my friend to the ground. "Liam, no," I begged. "Just let her tell me what." "You fucking let her hit Matt," he interrupted, shaking his head disapprovingly as he approached Frankie's shaking form on the gravel. "Jake," I began. "This is all a mess," Jensen's friend sighed. "What happened next was neither mercy nor torture. It was simply quick. So horrifyingly quick that I shrieked a second after it was over." Jake crouched beside Frankie, who was shuffling backwards on her elbows, with tears staining her face. And, without even a hint of fury, the man cleanly thrust his arm forwards. His concealed blade pierced Frankie's skull so swiftly that she perished with a gawp of horror perpetually stuck on her lifeless face. I screamed and turned on my heel. "Stop him!" Jake yelled at Liam, who was standing with a gormless expression on his face. But Liam was not as fast as Matt, not as strong, not as smart, which was saying something. I ran and I never looked back, never contacted the authorities. Ran and kept running to a distant town, then a distant city, then a distant country. Despite extensive research, I haven't been able to find anything about the thing of which Frankie spoke. But I know it was real, not only due to my continued existence as Jensen, but due to shadows at the edge of my vision, which forever pirouette out of view. I know that hooded thing follows me, relishes in my torture, trapped within the body of my tormentor. A hellish existence which never wanes, never ends. I may be trapped in this body forever, a constant reminder of the man who died before my eyes, wearing my body as some ghastly outfit. He finally saw the world through my eyes, if only for a moment. I always wanted him to understand my pain, but I wonder whether he would ever have truly understood. Empathy and understanding are two sides of a coin. I longed for the former, but settled for the latter, as Jensen was not capable of compassion, even for the one he claimed to love, and his power over me persists. I escaped him, but I still suffer, for I've lost a part of myself. I've lost all of myself, as I am fated to live in his vile body for the rest of my days. No matter where I go, his face will forever follow me.